Coach, I just talked about your tweet about Kelvin Sampson. Can you tell us a little more about that situation?
Yeah, we've got a story on ESPN.com now. Kelvin Sampson interviewed for that vacant Milwaukee Bucks head coaching job. I think really the first high-profile college coach, known college coach that we know of that has talked with Milwaukee. He's got history there. He was on Scott Skiles' staff 2008, 2011, then did another 3 years in Houston on their coaching staff before he went to the University of Houston. So he's got still some relationships in that front office. And Kelvin Sampson was an NBA head coaching candidate for several jobs during that window of time prior to going to Houston and building what is, I think, one of the elite college programs in the country, right? 4 straight Sweet 16s. They were #1 all season last year, a Final Four in there. And so they're casting a wide net in Milwaukee, talking to a lot of different folks. And he profiles differently than the other college coaches, or many others, because of that NBA experience and that time he spent, 6 years working with Scott Skiles and then Kevin McHale to start out with in Houston, and he was with Greg Popovich for a little bit when he first left Indiana. So an interesting name in the mix in Milwaukee.
I've always loved Coach Kelvin Sampson. Every time I've been around him, I come away impressed. He gets so much out of his guys, and he gets these stars now at Houston, but they all check their egos at the door because of how much respect they have for Coach Sampson. He just gets the best out of everybody.
Yeah, he checks the boxes with, listen, he's certainly an elite, he's shown to be an elite game coach. His teams always defend, and players have gotten better at him, and NBA teams want, even when you're a contender, a championship contender like Milwaukee, you always want to be developing the young players you have on your roster, whether it's second-round picks, late first. They don't have, they're not going to get high draft picks in Milwaukee, and so John Horst and that staff have done a really good job of identifying guys, drafting them, and then I think he brings certainly that dynamic to the equation. But again, this is somebody who's been in the NBA, has interviewed for jobs before, and obviously has a pretty good job right now at a place where he's really got it rolling.
And Woj, of course, with so many different vacancies right now, I believe still 5 vacancies as far as head coaches in the NBA, we know about the usual suspects. We pass around all the names of almost, I hate to say the term, but recycled coaches who have been great coaches in other places. Who's this year's Darvin Ham? Who's the new coach that's maybe been an assistant that we don't know about yet that could go in and take over one of these teams and be able to get them to the next step?
A lot of owners, general managers, they ask that question: who's this year's Darvin Ham? Who's this year's Will Hardy in Utah? And so, certainly some candidates. Charles Lee in Milwaukee, who's interviewed for a number of jobs. You look at that Mike Budenholzer coaching tree. Those guys all do really well. You go through
Taylor Jenkins.
You want to go through Taylor Jenkins and Quinn Snyder and
Darvin Ham.
And Darvin Ham to start. Listen, those guys have had a lot of success. Kenny Atkinson came from the Budenholzer coaching tree. So those are a couple names. Kevin Ollie in Detroit, he's a very serious candidate. They brought in 3 finalists to meet with their ownership last week. They're still going through it in Detroit. Obviously, Kevin Ollie has not been an NBA assistant coach, but played 17 years. And when he first came out of the league, everybody wanted him on their staff. Goes to UConn, wins a national championship, turns down a couple head coaching jobs. I believe when Bobby was in Brooklyn or New Jersey at the time, they were pretty serious in conversations with him. He goes to Overtime Elite and works there for several years, building up that program, and now he's in serious consideration with the Pistons.
Well, I was shocked with Monty Williams' firing with the Suns. Any idea what direction they're going to go?
I think it'll be a significant name. I think with Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, that group, maybe not a young coach. I think the one exception to that might be Kevin Young, who's their associate head coach, another young coach who's interviewed for some jobs, who I think everybody sees as a future head coach in the NBA, because he's got some relationships there right now and the respect of the group they have. I think you can't count him out. But you're looking at Mike Budenholzer, who is a Phoenix native. He's from there. Nick Nurse. So it's going to be some of those same names around Philadelphia Phoenix, Milwaukee, some championship level coaches who become available and may just play musical, to some extent may play musical chairs on these open jobs.
Well, we see turnover every year with coaches, right? But do you feel like this year there's certainly a pattern when you look at Phoenix, when you look at Milwaukee, you look at Philadelphia, teams that had great regular seasons and they then get eliminated in the postseason. I always say there's always an expiration date. But this year seems like the champion, I don't want to say championship or bust, but as far as you can get in the playoffs, it's sometimes not good enough.
And I think no, you're right, Bobby. And I think each of them are different. They're not all the same. It's not always as simple as we didn't advance as far as I thought we should have. We should have gotten to the conference final. We only got to the conference semifinal. So many of these are relationships, timing, and I think also it speaks to a very wide open league where there are a lot of owners and executives who think, I'm not sure that there's been a clear-cut team as great as Denver's been, as formidable as Boston is, how deep they are. I think there were a lot of teams who came into the season and got into the postseason thinking, this is wide open, we should advance. And then that window is always shrinking with these teams. Philadelphia around Joel Embiid, a new owner in Phoenix who clearly wants to have his own coach in there. You talk about Fonz, Monty Williams. That organization was a laughingstock when he took over 4 years ago. An absolute laughingstock. They had won 19 games. Nobody wanted to play there, and nobody wanted to send their players there in pre-draft. Nobody wanted their players to interview with the Suns or have them draft them, and that all changed.
Thank you for watching ESPN on YouTube. For live streaming sports and premium content, subscribe to ESPN+.